Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the Cyclocross World Cup, which took place in Dendermonde today, the 8th round of the series. Not quite the Dendermonde that we know from the last couple of years when it was muddy. It was a Formula 1 track, super fast racing, but it is the analyst you are used to having in your ears with me here to discuss all the action. Issam, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I am on the way back from Dendermonde, a very nice day out. I can already warn you a bit, Issam, it's going to be a weird podcast. I will need to praise Jurgen Mettepenningen, praise the event in Dendermonde, but it was well worth it because Mettepenningen, experienced organizer, he knows how to put on an event like this. The party tent, it was still going just now as I left. Quite a lot of people turning out. Everything well organized in the press room, well organized with the parking, the marshals. Everybody knew what to do and how to do it. So it was a good event. The course, yeah, it was fast, but that is cyclocross, and this is just what we saw today, Issam. This is why cyclocross is the best sport in the world. I mean, such a dogfight for the win in the men's category. The ambiance, the spectators going crazy, a nice winter day. This is our sport, Issam. This is it.
Yeah, this is indeed it. When you get a fast race in a way, which it really was, you know that it's if you have the right amount of riders for it, and also the level is there for it, that it is competitive. You just know that you're in for a treat. It's gonna be, a lot of juggling for position, and it's going to be a battle that you will not forget for in the coming days. And exactly what we got. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know for sure that everyone that watched it enjoyed it. And this is, it's not the Dendermonde that we are, usually seeing on our screen, the mud and a very sort of slow race. Really, in a way, also cyclocross, but this as well is in a way also fantastic to see. And every lap there was something happening in a way. Every lap there was a rider that had a good moment, and that is how it went throughout the entirety of the race. And there were just, it were just small things in the end, I guess, that made the differences. And I enjoyed it from lap 1 till the end.
I don't remember when the last time was we had a Christmas race with these weather conditions, with this many laps. I mean, 12 laps, that's 5 minutes a lap. All I could come up with just thinking was Duinencross Bredene back in the day, Paul Herreiger's GP. But yeah, there were a lot of laps, a lot of riders in contention for the win today in the men's category. So let's start with that, because we had early on in the race Thibaut Nys leading the charge, but not for too long. He was apparently trying to satisfy Issam, who criticized him the last couple of weeks for being too eager early on in the race. But we had a large leading group eventually of 9 riders, and multiple riders tried to make their move from there. Laurens Zweek, we had Felipe Orts, we had Wout van Aert pulling the pace for a lap or 3. But eventually, with 2 laps to go, there were still 9 leaders. And from those 9 leaders, it was Zweek who took the lead and set a quite high pace. That determined the outcome of the race, because Van Aert was in that leading group but got caught out. He just pulled for 2-3 laps, and as a result he fell back. He wasn't capable mentally and or physical to really commit to that positioning fight, whereas Nys did, and Doug also. Verstringen, they were all fighting for position. Zweek kept in the lead, but behind, Nys went from 5th to 2nd, back to 3rd, and eventually moved back up. What we saw in the end, a final lap battle. Zweek still in the lead, Nys and Dogoso behind. Those 3 riders were fighting it out for the win. Nys eager to make a move, tried a number of times, but eventually got the pass done. He took the lead, Dogoso quickly followed through. Those 2 went wheel to wheel. However, was it really a sprint? Not really, because in the final half of the lap, the accelerations of Nys were just violent. Every time he got a 2-3 bike length gap, and that was the same in the few 180s just before the finish. The accelerations of Nys gave him a small lead coming onto the start-finish straight, and from there he sprinted to the victory. Dogoso never really able to make a fist in that final lap. My observation here is 2 things. First of all, the riders that came to the forefront in the final lap, the most patient riders. patience is a very valuable skill to have as a rider, and it's one of the skills that takes a lot of development. You really need to develop that. You see, for instance, take Oben Sparfel. We've discussed him in under 23 a number of times. He completely doesn't have that skill yet. He's always eager, always thinks the race needs to be won in the first lap. Today, yeah, Nice was up there in the beginning. They also had a brief moment, but for most of the race, they sat in the wheel, came to the forefront. Between those two riders then, the difference, the explosivity. Yes, Del Grosso had a puncture. Yeah, that always influences the race a little bit. But Del Grosso, he could come back relatively easy. But let me explain that, because when he punctured, yes, Van Aert did pull through, but the gap was 6 seconds. The gap was also 6 seconds when the pace dropped and Sveik took the lead. And it was at that moment that Del Grosso came across. So had he been at the front, he would need to do the same lap time as he was behind. But what we saw, like time after time again, like every corner in that final half lap, the acceleration, the punch of Thibaut Nys, just out of the saddle, bum, 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 those 3 upshifts. That's where he made the difference. Every time he pulled away, and Del Grosso late on the brakes managed to close that gap a few times with great technical display. But ultimately, that doesn't really matter if you're not coming first onto that start-finish straight then.
That will, of course, not matter all that much, and you could see it there on the last part of the lap. Nys was just really on it. We discussed this before of the record, and I have the tendency to look at that puncture and give it, more of an influence on the race than you are doing. But in the end, I think that Nys was still probably the better man, and you can see that throughout the race, to be honest, because he was in the beginning very eager, and I thought, I have my story already ready and I will continue on from the story that I had in Gavre. But then there was that switch from Thibaut, and he was all of a sudden he just managed to put himself in a position that I really liked, because he was always up there at the front, but not that much. I think there was one moment where I thought, and that was probably when Van Aert went and took the lead, where he was like in 6th or 7th, and I was like, that's not really where you want to be. You want to be more at the front, because you just always, you can not really trust the guys in front of you, especially with a course like this, when it's so fast. You just never really know when one of the riders in front of you, you will already know that there's going to be a rider in front of you when you're just a little more at the back, that there is a rider or two that will crack and that will, leave a gap, and you have to close a gap. And, a 2 seconds gap here or a 3 seconds gap here is not nothing. You really have to try and, because the speed is so high, it's just, you gotta be you're really being put on the pressure, and to close gaps, it's not really something you want to spend your energy doing the entirety of the race. And Laurens Sveik, I saw him in the race, but I have to say I did not really think that he would play a role for a podium spot. He moved up there, I think that was lap 11, and that was the moment when Van Aert kind of dropped the pace, because he was leading there for that entirety of the lap, really gave it his all in a way, and he dropped. And the next shot that we got on the broadcast was Sveik leading the pack, and I think that the way he did that also put the riders that were not positioned well, like a Van Aert, it really compromised their races in a way, because he never really dropped the pace. And to be honest, from there on, the pace never really dropped, because when Sveik was really fading just that tiny bit, Nys immediately knew this is the moment, and he made the same move I think he made 2-3 laps ago. Beautiful move there to pass Sveik. And Del Grosso was very keen on following through, and I thought, maybe we're going to a sprint here, but just in the corners. The way he was also getting out of those corners as a cannon, that really made the difference there for Nys. And Del Grosso never really was in his wheel, and that in the last corner, if the guy in front of you also has a sprint, it's impossible to win from that position. And very, very deserved win by Thibaut Nys. A very strong ride. They played poker the best, the three. Both Nys and Del Grosso were very calm, very collected. And Laurens Sveik maximized 100% his results here today. I think that in a way it translates the form that he has, the legs that he has, in a way it translates into the result that he has. But his tactics today were also super on point. He made that position for himself, and he put himself in that position I think that is something that certain riders maybe have to learn from a little bit, because you're not always going to have the legs to get in that position, but you just have to be smart in a way, and you have to find your way. You have to read the race. And Sveik, like no other, if he gets that opportunity, if you give him that opportunity, and he got that opportunity, he will take it. And I think that that he did a stellar job. Even though it's only third, I think he still really outperformed himself today here.
Before I agree with you on Sveik, one more thing about Thibaut Nys. There was not that much technical stuff on this course here. Yeah, there were corners, but it was kind of speed limited. Everybody, except maybe Van Aert in a negative way, able to match each other. But the one section that was a little bit slippery was just after the big set of stairs, the second set of stairs. You had that weird little downhill, and then you came to these 180 corners. Those were the only slippery sections on the course, and you should pay attention, if you ever rewatch this, to the lines that Thibaut Nys is taking there, because he was riding a super aggressive tight line on the first right-hander, and then moving from the outside, cutting all the way across inside on the second one. In the last lap, that is maybe, if you're gonna attribute the lack of punch to something other than the puncture for Del Grosso, it's that moment, because Nys cuts all the way across. As a result, he's been doing that 3-4 laps. I'm surprised nobody followed him, because it really worked well. I mean, one time he just gained 2 seconds on Van Aert there, but in the final lap, Del Grosso was kind of caught off guard by it, slammed on the brakes, and it was kind of a brake check. He grabbed onto the fence and pulled him forward again, and then needed to close a 2-second gap to Sveik and Nys. So that was, I think, a really good thing for Nys. Like the way that he reads the course, the way that he takes these lines, it's really one of his skill sets. He really has good vision and good adaptability, because in the beginning of the race he wasn't riding that, but he recognized it during the race. That's the skill of a great cyclocross rider. And once again, if he puts his mind to something, and once he locks in, it's also just so imminent. If he really goes for it, you don't see these performances like in Zolder where he sits at the back. Thibaut Nys rarely ever has a bad start in a race that matters. He has bad starts in races where he's already feeling iffy on beforehand. And today was one of those days. He locked in, he took the win. Del Grosso a close second. Maybe, like we said in Gaveren, not as powerful as Nys yet, but definitely more versatile. Good ride for him. And then Sveik Issam, for me, like you said, maximize his performance. You could say, maybe he should have waited until the last lap, but I don't think he had the legs for that. And by doing this, he stayed out of the positioning fight. And maybe Van Aert thinks back like, I wish I also did that and stayed out of that positioning fight, because what we've seen on the road, not that good in the positioning this year in the classics. It seems to have translated a little bit to cyclocross, even though it's a completely different situation, because that was just abysmal.
The only thing that I can think of there was maybe for Van Aert to think that the pace would drop, going into the last lap. But even that, I don't really know what he was doing there, because you kind of know already when you are in that position, the position he was in, leading there, and the pace is dropping. You just know that there is a danger of riders that are coming from behind, and it's hard to kind of judge that and really have an idea of what rider is going to pass you and how you're going to try and be able to follow the rider or be ahead of him, so you kind of can find yourself in a similar position you were in before. And he just lost 7 positions in 2-3 corners, just like that. And I think that obviously, the moment where Sveik made the race, of course, was that move, but he also made it by making sure that the pace never really dropped, because from the moment he was in the lead, he just went for it. And he, even the last lap, when they went on the start-finish to enter the last lap, he didn't really look that much behind. He knew this is the moment to go now. And I think that was for sure, apart from the fact that Van Aert today was atrocious, in the technical sections, and as you said, and rightfully so, it was not all that technical. There were some sections where you kind of had a finesse in a way, but overall he was by far the worst, maybe in the top 20 in terms of how he was taking the corners, maybe in the top 30. It was bad, and we saw that last year in Gullegem. If Iserbeet was a little better there, I think that he would have won there. The way he was taking the corners there, it was really bad. And today, I wouldn't say that it was as bad as in Gulligem, because in Gulligem it was I think it was even worse. Was also a little more tricky, I guess. But it was again today not good, because you could see. I think there was a moment where he was behind Verstringen. He was behind Verstringen, I think, for 2-3 laps, and then every time it was there's a second, then 2 seconds, then he was able to, there were a couple of straights, and he got back a little bit. Then again, there was the section where you had like the second pit zone, and there we go again. There was 2 seconds, and then on the start finish line, he had again 2 seconds to close. And I guess in a way, it's hard to judge, what the form is of Van Aert in a race like this, because he just never really got himself into a race. And the moment he got himself into a race, which was lap 10, where he was in the lead, I think he went a little too hard there, because he probably anticipated, I guess, that the group would be shortened a little bit and there were only going to be maybe 2-3 guys. And if you then fall back there in last position, in fourth, it's not a disaster. But now I guess he didn't anticipate that the group was going to be that big, despite him pulling for an entire lap, which was a good lap, by the way. He just didn't have it, and his positioning was bad. His technique was off. It was not a good race by Van Aert. A bit of bad luck, I guess, because I think that I said somewhere that Dendermonde definitely was a race where he could win. Of course, that was to a Dendermonde with a lot of mud and a tough race and a slow race in a way, and that would definitely have played in the cards of Van Aert, and I would have been sure that with the field of today, he would have won. Today, we didn't get that. We got a fast race, we got a technical race, and it exposed a lot of weaknesses that Van Aert has, and the main weakness, I guess, is his technique. Sure, his positioning also there was terrible, but I think that the technique there hurt him even more and definitely didn't help him moving up places when he wasn't in the right position.
Real estate broker Van Aert gave a house tour but then got locked out by his potential clients. He toured around for 3 laps and then fell short, which, I mean, I'm just going to try and reason here a little bit, because first of all, the technical part, I agree, it was not good. It really wasn't good. You could see it, like, he had the power to try and attempt the pass, but he just didn't have the capabilities on his bike to complete the pass in a corner. Verstringen going side by side around the outside and gets it done. Van Aert doesn't really have the confidence to do that. Am I surprised? No, because Van Aert, we already saw this last year. We even see it with Van der Poel. We discussed in Gavere and in Namur. His technical skills are not as good. He seems a bit iffy. He seems a bit rusty. He doesn't train it that much anymore. Van Aert the same. He even less than Van der Poel. So I'm not surprised by it. I'm also not disappointed by it. This is the Van Aert that we've come to know these last few years. So it's no shame in being like that. Then I think what he did was kind of make the calculation like, oh, I've been sitting at the back here in this group. It's been quite difficult to move up. It's been a fast-paced race. What is the best opportunity for me? And he probably thought, yeah, this section from pit 1 to pit 2, that's my Achilles heel. That's where I'm going to suffer. So if I just lead and then drop an absolute bomb 2 or 3 laps in a row, perhaps that is enough to shake them off or at least get away with the group. But it wasn't, because Van Aert did hurt them. Trust me. Emil Verstringen, Zweek, Van Toerenhout, Orts in the wheel, they were suffering. Van de Putte, they were. But because of the technical abilities of Van Aert, they also kept getting lifelines thrown to them to get back. So ultimately, I think with the course conditions we had, it just wasn't to be for Van Aert, and we can say, yeah, maybe if he waits longer, he can for sure have gotten a better result. But I think on this course, Van Aert, it just wasn't ever on the cards that he was going to beat Nys and Del Grosso.
No, I think that if it was going to be a 3-way battle, that both Nys and Del Grosso would be ahead. He just never really had the cards to play. He was invited to the party, but never really went on the dance floor. It was just he had that moment, and that was it. You should not really take this race as a reference in the sense that Van Aert now is even getting beaten, by 5 other riders. Van der Putte was able to just snatch that position there in the sprint. That is not a reference that you should take with you in the remainder of the season. whatever that will be for Van Aert, if there is going to be something after the nationals, we don't really know at the moment. But he is still the rider that we also saw in races before Dendermonde, and I think personally that he will grow in this season. Technically, he should normally also get a little bit better, should have a better feeling. That will all improve in a way. How much? Hard to say. In terms of form, the form is there. We have seen it in Oosterzolder, we've seen it in Ostade. He has the legs. There is some power behind it. The form is getting better. Yeah, this was again a race where we got the facts and we got a hard truth about and a harsh truth about the technical skills of Van Aert in a way. And there is nothing wrong with that. I just think that if he wants to come into a season and start, from the beginning of his campaign, of his cyclocross campaign, start winning against the competitors he's racing against right now, excluding Van der Poel, he has to drastically change that preparation, and he has to take the technical part of cyclocross way more serious, because he has a deficit there, and a huge deficit. If he fixed that a little bit, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be like a Del Grosso or Nice, but he just needs to have enough, because it seems like his form is all right, so he can compensate less. And if he compensates less, I think that today he would have been able to fight for victory. But just because he was so many times he had to compensate, and again and again and again, and then that fast lap, and then the group wasn't really thinned out, and you're 100% right, they were all suffering in his wheels in a way, but it was not enough. And that's the whole issue. It is not enough. With Van der Poel, technically, sure, it's not top-notch at times, but he always finds something. And he has then, for him, it's just, it takes little less effort to do what Van Aert is doing. And that is just the issue that he has currently. And he has to work on that. And I'm for sure that if he is able to work on it, he's still one of the better cyclocross riders that we have. And he still is, by the way. But just on these type of courses, he just makes his life so much difficult.
Van der Poel has and is better technically. He has always been better technically, so that won't change. But yeah, I agree with that assessment. Van Aert definitely entertained the crowd. He could still very much finish second at the World Championships, but if he ever really wants to make a play, which at this point is not what he really wants, because there's no decision yet if he's going to race the World Championships, yeah, then we will see. But I think overall we will see some more from Van Aert, some more like we saw in Mol. But for now, please, Belgian media, hold your headlines, which I saw over Christmas. Van Aert approaching level, Van der Poel. We're not quite there yet, but nevertheless, a good day out. The fans certainly enjoyed it. Many small kids out there cheering for him, which is always a great sight to see. At one point there was this 5-year-old kid and just adorable, just is a pure cyclocross fan, and he knew so many riders. Like from the top 30, he probably knew 20 of them, and he just started cheering for them. And come on, Toon, come on, Emil, come on, Laurens, just every one of them trying to support them. And Van Aert got the loudest cheer from him. So definitely a winner of the hearts, Van Aert, which again is another attribute which makes this sport so great. So let's look at the entire top 10. Nice, Del Grosso, Zweek. Another great performance by Emil Verstringen in 4th place. Niels van der Putten 5th. 6th place for Van Aert, 7th Van Toerenhout, 8th Orts, 9th Hendricks, and 10th Toon Aerts. Don't know, Issam, if you have anybody who you would like to pick out from the top 10 to discuss before we move to the women's race?
I think Verstringen today was a very strong race again, very strong outing. He was always moving along with Nice a little bit and with Del Grosso, and he was always behind them. But his positioning today was definitely all right, and he's definitely one of those riders that looks at a course that we got presented today in the circumstances and was thinking, well, why didn't it rain? It normally always rains somewhat in this period, and now it didn't. And a race like Dendermonde in the rain, I think, would have benefited Verstringen maybe even more. But it is what it is, and he's in great form. He shows that with a race like today, which I think, I wouldn't say he has a huge disadvantage here, but he cannot really play his cards like he would be able to in a course that would just be a bit tougher. It is what it is for him. The circumstances are the circumstances, and you have to deal with them. But I think, nevertheless, for him, a very, very strong race. And I think that Van der Putten also was able to move himself nicely in the last lap, got both Van Toerenhout and Van Aert there because he was behind them both. Orts had a good race, in the end faded a little bit, but I think that he definitely colored the race, especially in the beginning of it. So I think that he definitely deserves some praising as well. And yeah, you ask for one rider, I'm already going over 3, so that tells you something about this race.
My pick would have been Felipe Orts for that matter. A good race today by him. Maybe a little bit too excited when he made that move just after the halfway point of the race, but definitely a solid outing by him. His teammate Jos Nieuwhuis is out with knee issues. He crashed on his knee in Antwerp off camera, and we don't really know when he's going to return. Also got informed by one of our podcast listeners who was actually there today at the race and met me, which was really nice. The few people that recognized me and came up to me always very much appreciate it. He also said that Thibaut Nys crashed off camera in Gavre and showed me a video from his phone that the lap before he dropped for Stringen, he crashed at the bottom of the climb. But yeah, Orts, good outing. And then for me, secondly, in just outside of the top 10, so not really a fair point, 15th place, Martin Gros-Lambert definitely surprised me today. He was moving up quite nicely, staying in the wheels, kind of surfing off the riders who dropped at the front of the race. So that much for the men's race. Then let's go to the women's race there. Kind of more business as usual. We had the French taking a lightning start. It was Amandine Fouquenet with the whole shot, taking Célia Géry with her. But Lucinda Brandt wasn't far off, 10 seconds down in the first lap, but easily recovered from third, back to the lead, went on to take the win. Nothing really in her way today. This is the just continuation. Brilliant Brandt, unbeatable Brandt. Give it whatever title you want, but certainly impressive, really, really strong season for her. Fouquenet fell back a little bit after that fast start. It was almost the reverse scenario of Gavre. She was in a battle again with Puk Pieterse, but this time it was Pieterse who rode away and held it like a 4 or 5 second gap over Fouquenet until the end. But Fouquenet got signed by Paul Saus, a 2-year contract, another World Cup podium for her third. Think that she can be very pleased with that. But yeah, Brandt, Issam, just another one of those days.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just it is. She's on a level right now that is just hard to compete against. And today there were certain moments that played a role. I think that Fouquenet, the way she started, maybe a bit too eager. Maybe it would have extended the tension, I guess, for us as a viewer, for maybe a lap, maybe even less. But it is what it is. Stellar ride again, super strong. I thought that today, with the circumstances, that it would have been more interesting for a little longer. But I think that definitely what played a role as well was the bad start from Pieterse. Alvarado also missing her start in a way. You make it Brandt that much easier, and yeah, she was up there already with both Fouquenet and Géry, and when Brandt felt that it was time to go, she went, and there is not really someone that can stop her at this point. And I guess definitely the fact that Fouquenet now has a contract is amazing to hear. I have to say I had my doubts about Mette Penningen, but maybe I owe him an apology, because I think that it's a very, very good move. I hope that their expectations are set correctly, because we have seen Fouquenet and the way she has been racing, but you have to also take in mind the field is maybe a little bit different at the moment than it would have been. So you never know how that will, what that will mean for the next season. So that's definitely something that I hope that they have, that they have in order. But overall, I think that it is a good move, and I wish her all the best. Most likely, it's not definitive yet, but most likely she's going to ride with AG Insurance on the road. Nothing confirmed, but that would definitely also not be a bad thing, so she can still be able to do the combination of both the road and cyclocross, and that is just lovely to see. But yeah, I think that was definitely nice to see. And Pieterse didn't really have that moment in the race that we normally have seen from her this season so far, so I think maybe there is some improvements there as well.
It's time to go, Lucinda Brandt. It's what an incredible season she's having. Just absolutely unreal. The consistency with which she's able to deliver these top-end performances. I think the announcer on site said 58 podiums in a row. Ladies and gentlemen, 58 podiums. There's people who dream of getting that in their career, let alone in a row. It's so impressive. And with that, yeah, I think that's all I have to say, unfortunately. I can't keep inventing things to talk about, unfortunately. It is what we've grown accustomed to, and it is a very impressive performance. Pieterse, I would say, I agree, Issam, a positive point. She's not really kind of had that setback anymore. I believe that Pieterse, like on a course, maybe if it's a bit more muddy, if it's a bit more slippery, like there will be opportunities for her this year. And I've said it before, if she stays healthy, doesn't have that illness like in the last 2 years, I want to see it, because for her, one race counts this season, and it's the World Championship. So have at it. Hulst, good course for her. I'd like to see that. But then her start will need to be better than today. That has, from time to time, been a bit of a problem for her. Will I apologize to Mette Penninge? No. Because if you make those diabolical comments about women's cycling and everybody being in the beer tent, then I will not apologize for criticizing you for that as long as possible. But I will then still give you the props for following through and saying, well, there is a top rider on the market and I will make a move, and I have a French sponsor, and I'll see what we can do and if we can move some things. I think it's good that she isn't dependent in the end on the Roodhoof brothers. So I'm glad that she got a ride. You said it before, we would be failing as a sport. Definitely agree with that, and it's great for her. And it was another great ride, Issam. I don't really think anything else would have mattered for Foucounet. Could she have beaten Pieterse? I don't know. To me, it felt Pieterse was kind of in control, knew Brandt was without reach, and then just focused on that second place without wasting too much energy, because it's a super busy period.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not saying, as I said, I don't think that Foucounet could have done a lot different. As I said, maybe a bit too eager in the beginning, but overall, still a very strong ride as well. And Pieterse was today just was maybe just that little bit better, and then it's just very hard to change that. Make the race go your way a little bit more. So I think overall that there's not much to say, and maybe I will retract my apology on those statements. But overall, I think I did not expect Mette Penninge to do it, to be honest. And I think that maybe the results of Foucounet have helped him eventually make that decision. I just hope that he's not going to be... You just know sometimes with these kind of moves that there are certain expectations attached to it, and if they are not fulfilled, it could be an ugly way that they are working together, and that it eventually kind of falls out. And I hope that that's not going to be the case. I'm, way ahead on things right now and speculating way too much, but it's just sometimes it has happened in the past, and I hope that I'm not foreseeing something that will eventually happen. But overall, I think it's a great move. And as I said, the sport would have failed if that was not going to happen. If she was not going to have a contract before January 1st. Now she has one. She has to ride in those ugly in that ugly kit of Paul Sousa. So that is a minus, I guess. I hoped for a new team or something. Overall, great news in that regard.
But she'll wear that with pleasure. Like she'll be happy, and yeah, I agree.
A French champion, of course.
Yeah, for now. But who knows what happens in Troyes? Troyes is a course where she could be challenged by Célia Géry. It is a bit more technical, and that is what I wanted to say about the start, Issam. It's the style of Foucounet also, right? To set out fast, and it's one of her qualities, the good start, and making use of that is not a problem. So I don't really think that today she really blew up. Like, stop the bleeding. That's kind of the thing. It's okay to set back, but you need to fall back into a rhythm, and you need to stop the bleeding and stop losing 20 seconds each lap, because then it's going to go quick. And that bleeding didn't stop for Géry. She definitely blew up, and this is not the first time that we've seen that this season, that Géry goes out very hard. Be it like today, kind of following through with the whole shot, or be it like in Flamanville, where she's super eager in the first lap to move up as many positions as possible, and then it's just kind of a free fall. And in Gavere that didn't happen. You saw that she took a more calm and more tentative approach to the opening phase of the race, and she still fell back a little bit, but she stopped the bleeding there. And today that didn't happen. So that difference in style is one I wanted to note, and why for Fukune it's not really a problem. We've discussed this a lot about Schreiber as well, right? That she seemed to be fixated on taking the whole shot, and as a result then didn't stop the bleeding and kind of fell through the floor and didn't ever seem to reach her ceiling. And the funny thing is that Géry profited from that, winning the European title last year, and now she seems to be the one repeatedly making the mistake of being too eager. And then I come back to the key word of today: patience. Géry was not patient enough. She went all out, didn't listen to what she knows about her performance abilities, fell through, and then still second under 23. But I believe today, with a better approach, she could have won the U23 race and beat Bentveld.
I have to say that she was in quite a difficult spot, because when she looked behind, there was no one really there, and it's quite unnatural, I guess, to just be like, okay, I have to drop now because the pace is too high. Because she profited a lot from a very fast start, and I think the moment that Brandt also kind of arrived there, and the pace was not dropping, she at a certain moment had to make a decision, because I think that in that group behind, the bigger group there with Ribeiro as one of the riders there leading it out, that was the perfect group to be in. And I think that if she was in there from like lap 2, 3, it would have been, it could have helped her out in the race, and it probably would have helped her also out, getting a better result. But to be honest, she's at an age that you can make these kind of mistakes. It doesn't really matter all too much. You learn, and you have to learn from these races. That is the most important thing. And it's always when you have these type of races that before the race, it's like you gotta start fast, and when you start fast, you gotta be in the groups and make your moves and don't be afraid. And sometimes you're just maybe going into the race and get too carried away by the circumstances that you get in a way, and you get just too carried away, and it sometimes costs you, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the legs as well, and the form of the day and all that. So that it's just a couple of things, a couple of areas, and it's just, this season for her must be a lesson overall. It's just constantly learning and learning and learning, and then eventually you will learn so much that you will be the one forcing others in mistakes. So I think overall, it's the bright future is 100% still there, and I know that is definitely not what you're trying to, say that that's not really the case or anything. But I'm just saying, learning. That's what she has to do.
Yeah, for sure, and it's totally fine to make those mistakes, as you say. I'm just saying that while it might be unnatural when you look behind and you don't see anybody to kind of hold back and just ride your own pace, that is what you should do, and that is the difference between a rider that is more experienced and a rider that is less experienced. And Géry isn't that experienced yet, and perhaps doesn't really realize that sometimes you have to take one step back to go 2 steps forward. So it's fine. I don't mean to be overly critical of her here today, but it's definitely something I've noticed over the last couple of races, that she's just gone out quite fast and then as a result faded towards the end of the race. Today still finishing in the top 10 though, which should be said is an impressive result for a second year under 23. Let's go over the entire top 10. Brandt, Pietersen, Foucounet the podium, Alvarado 4th, Ribeiro 5th ahead of Bentveld, Van Alphen 7th, Zemanova 8th, Bakker 9th, and then Géry in 10th. For me, Issam, a few performances. Ribeiro, very good. Van Anrooy, not that good. Alvarado, good second half of the race, a bit iffy in the first half. Those are kind of my 3 takeaways from here. The rest, Van Alphen suffering a little bit this Christmas period. Van der Heijden bad period, we've discussed that before. Zemanova continues what we know is a good season and really back up there. So those 3 were the ones that kind of stood out to me, and then I'll come to my last mention after that.
Yeah, I tend to agree a little bit with that as well, or a little bit. I think almost completely. I think the issue as well is here a little bit that when you are entering the Christmas period and you just have a sort of a decline in your form, it's hard to get over that. because you're just getting in this trend and it just falls down slowly but surely, and eventually you're at the end of the Christmas period, and maybe you have a day in between somewhere race there where it goes a little bit better and you think, we are on the way up, and then you just get that feeling again of just feeling worse and worse. And you just see that a certain riders there are suffering from that a little bit. Van Alphen is definitely in a period where you just kind of see a small decline left and right, and a day like today, a small decline could mean it costs you a couple of positions, and that was today a little bit the case. And there are certain riders even that at this point are thinking about the national. So it's, don't get too carried away with certain narratives, because there are definitely some riders that are also thinking about nationals and maybe even thinking about the things that come after the nationals, including the world championships.
My final mention goes out to Raphael Carrier, 14th today, third under 23. Really, really good result. This course suits her. She is not a technically skilled rider, but still worth mentioning that this is a very good result. We discussed her a little bit in the podcast from Zolder. And yeah, it's just good to see her up there. It was a quite tense battle for that final under 23 podium spot. For a while, there were some other contenders in the mix there as well. Moving to the men's under 23 then, a interesting course played out. The scenario was quite entertaining. We had in the beginning a large leading pack, then Arthur van der Boer broke away and he got a 20-second lead. But again, Issam, I come back to this one word, patience. And David Haverdings, with 3 laps to go, 20 seconds down, the first time he eats the wind in the chase and he cuts into the lead. And in the final lap, the bell goes, he's on the wheel. And in the final lap, as we've grown accustomed to, third time this season, he does that for the win. He finishes it off, takes the win. Van der Boer second, very good result for a first year under 23. Courses was also coming across with Haverdings. Courses last week in Koksijde blew up at the end. This time he kind of changed around his plan. He sat in the wheel of Haverdings and just tried to follow him as long as possible. So that was kind of the race scenario that unfolded there. I saw a strong Vietzi coming from another bad start. I saw Sparvel today not really on top of his game. It's quite normal that the French don't really perform all too well in the last World Cup of the Christmas period, or at least when it's in December. It's just, for some reason, something that happens. And for the rest, yeah, Aaron Dox, I said it before, he's becoming more and more of a road rider, and this season just confirms that to me.
The French celebrate Christmas just a little too hard, huh?
Perhaps.
But no, I think for Haverding's a great development again, and just he is a smart rider. He is a rider that can read the race quite well for his age and in the category that he is in currently, and that is just a gift that you just have it or you don't. Some riders develop that over their career and get better throughout that, and others will never really learn how to read a race and will always make mistakes and decisions in the race where you look afterwards and be like, why did I do that? Or as a viewer, look at it and be like, why did he do that? And Haverdings is not that type of rider. He's a rider that really knows how to read a race, really knows when it's his moment to make something happening. And you need that. And it's, you need to have good legs. You need to be in good form. And he currently looks to be in great form and has the legs and is able to make his move. So, that is definitely heading in the right direction for probably his goals that he has set for, and who knows what that will mean for the championships.
For Haverdings, I still really want to see something in the elite category because he's a final year under 23. So his reputation and everything exceeds him and means that you would expect these things. And in the under 23s, he's certainly having a solid outing this season with number of wins in the X2O trophy in here. But in the elite category, he's not really raced with them for a while. Early on in this season, he got that 9th in here, which is why I backed him for the European Championships. But still, I want to see something there. Like, it's nice that you can do it as a final year under 23, and I'm still a believer of Haverdings. I went quite hard on that before this season started, but I want to see more of that. Similarly, but this is more out of curiosity because I get a little bit bored during the women's junior races this year. Lise Revol is an absolutely unreal talent. Powered away once again today in the first lap. Head start, whole shot, never seen again. Easy win, easy life, cruise. Arnaud Jouffroy is here, and he's always saying, yeah, when you see the front, you think cyclocross, easy life. That's exactly what I think when I look at Lise Revol. Technical, physical combination is just perfect. It matches and never really in any sort of trouble today. Bukowska not here. Grossman also not here. Those are the two riders I'm looking at to potentially mount a challenge to her. For second place, actually interesting battle. For a long time, two Dutch girls were there with quite a large lead, Isis Versluis and Nienke Jochems. But they got accompanied up front by Zoe Roach, the British rider, and Shana Huber, a Swiss rider. In the final lap, it was Huber who sprinted. She'd done most of the pulling to come back and sprinted to second. No, she broke clear, and Versluis beat Roach in the sprint for third. That is the correct way of describing the events, Issam.
I have to peek at the results, but that is somewhat a name that I haven't seen in the top 10 in the World Cup series in junior categories on the men's side with Shana Hubert. What I think she's, if I look at the profile and all that, more a mountain biker than a cyclocross rider, but seems to have, enough in the tank for a podium. What do you make of her, and did you pick something up?
Well, I remember her from the European Championships where she was quite good in the running section. She's physically quite strong. Technically, it seemed fine, but there was not that much I could really go off by today. She definitely made a strong impression. She's a first year, and you just see sometimes, like as a first year, it takes quite some time to adapt, to get used to the racing, adapt to the racing style over here. I mean, I spoke with a number of junior women after the finish, and I also spoke, for instance, with a Swedish girl, Greta Andersson, who finished 21st or 20th, and she described, yeah, just like adjusting to the racing here in Belgium, the highest level, just how tight it is, how much you need to fight for position. That all is different from what I'm used to, so that could definitely have played a role for her, because yeah, today if you can do well here, then you would maybe have expected something more in Tabor, although that was frozen. But nonetheless, yeah, she was already good at the European Championships, and today she showed again physically that she's definitely able of doing well. But for her, the start, a big problem, big problem. But maybe if she and Bukowska join forces, it's a dangerous combination to have chasing you.
Starting here as well is a must in a way, because if you're not starting well on a fast course, you just find yourself so far back that, before you know it, it costs you so much energy. And even if you have the legs to be up front, you kind of hurt your race so much that it could influence your result in a way. And most of the time, it will influence it in a bad way. So, starting well is one of the things that you kind of have to master if you want to have good results.
Finally, the men junior then was a big leading group, 6 leaders roughly. Here and Goort for the Netherlands. Italians were there with Grigolini and Pezzo Rosola. Lejeune was there, and Surinbrier-Jumar was there. But it were mainly the Italians driving the pace. Rosola and Grigolini taking turns. Rosola quite active. He made a strong impression, really gunning it out of the corner before the second pit zone to the stairs. That's really where he went all out and put the rest under pressure a number of times. Jumar made a strong impression, but he had a mechanical, I believe his derailleur hanger ripped or got bent just after the second pit. He needed to run, and that was game over for him. What I did like, though, was that I still saw a fighting spirit. He got way down there, but was still eager in those final laps to move up positions again, place the dive bombs, even sprint for 42nd position against his countrymen. So that's something I definitely respect in his mentality. But without him, 3 riders broke clear. The Dutch riders Gooyert and Here got dropped, leaving Rosola Grigolini with Lejeune to fight for the win. Pezzo Rosola took the lead in the final lap, and it was quite similar to how Thibaut Nys took the lead. He just gunned it and gapped them out of every corner just a little bit, and from there went on to sprint towards the victory. Grigolini was on the wheel coming onto the start-finish straight, but never really made an attempt, and neither did Lejeune. So Italy rules. There's some 4 riders in the top 10. There are 2 first years in the top 10. So it seems to be traditions at this point that the top Italians take the win in the Christmas period in January, and that the first years are already getting some results, prepping themselves to continue that Italian streak next year.
Yeah, the future is looking bright for sure. And also for the championships is also looking quite good for the Italians. They have the cards currently, and hopefully they can hold on to that. But it is nice to see that Lejeune is able to play a role again at the front, more at the front than he was able to, and maybe he is finding himself right now in a better period. So if he's able to hang on to that and continue on with that, I think that he is definitely going to be a danger for both Italians in both championships and in the races that will come in the future. So that is also a promising sign. And those two Dutch riders, Heer and Gooyert, are also going quite well this season. So that is also interesting. But when the championships will arrive, everything that happened before you can somewhat forget. You can take some with you, but eventually, it's just that one day that will decide a whole lot for these riders. So that will be interesting for sure. But nice to see Petsarosola take the win here.
And with that, we come to the end of this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast. Issam, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We are back tomorrow when the XO Trophy heads to Loenhout. Thanks everyone for listening. Catch you guys then. Goodbye.